Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rahul Verma, and I work here at the Center for Policy Research. And behind me, you can see a lovely poster of CPR with a new logo. This is our 50th year, and so our lovely comms team has designed this new logo. What we're going to do today, discuss Karnataka results, which came out on May 13th. And in our usual fashion, Neelan and I'll present some data. Some of it we have this time borrowed from our friends from HT, some of their lovely graphics. And then we are joined by two eminent panelists. Dr. Sandeep Shastri, who's in Bangalore, has been tracking, writing about India's politics for very, very long. He's the national coordinator for Lokniti Network at the Center for Study of Developing Societies, which has been doing election surveys. They started the first generation of election surveys started in 1967, but the latest avatar began in 1996. And so Dr. Sastry has been writing on Karnataka politics. He was commenting on many national TV channels. And so welcome, Dr. Sandeep Shastri. Thank you so much for joining us today. And with us, we also have Aditi Fadnis at CPR here. Aditi is a consulting editor at the Business Standard. She's an old hand covering national politics, writing on Karnataka, when Business Standard was easily available online, I used to read profiles of politicians that you used to do. Now that most of the newspapers have gone behind paywalls, it has become difficult. But thank you, Aditi ji, for joining us here at CPR. And so many of you have joined us on Zoom. I would request you to keep posting your questions or comments on Q&A. After my and Neelan's presentation, I'll try to bring in your questions while putting them to our panelists. So you can keep putting them on your Q&A box whenever you feel one. So can I start with the presentation? Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so the first two graphs, the first map is from Hindustan Times, lovely graphic. Basically, what they are doing is comparing 2023 and 2018 results. The headline numbers, you all may know, Congress won 136 seats this time, BJP 65, JDS 19. The Congress gained 56 seats in comparison to the 2018 election. BJP lost 39 seats, and JDS also lost 18 seats. And if you look at the map of Karnataka, the 2018-2023 map, the last time map looked much more saffron in color, which is basically the color HT is using to denote BJP. And this time it has become much more blue in color. The second graphic is actually from Stats of India. And what they have done on this graphic very intelligently, they have these sort of like triangles, which basically gives you a clue about the margin of victory. So larger that triangle, meaning higher the margin of victory in that place was. And what we know from our analysis that between 2018 and 2023, the margin of victory hasn't changed. It has remained around, the median margin of victory has remained around 9.8 percentage points. And so looking at the map, and Neelan will go much more in detail what happened in different regions of Karnataka. So those who study and know about Karnataka, Karnataka has very distinct regions demographically and as well as their socio-economic profile, and voting patterns have differed. So those who know Karnataka, this area where my cursor is actually is called as Hyderabad, Karnataka, bordering Andhra Pradesh. This region, Belgaum and other districts bordering Maharashtra is known as Mumbai, Karnataka or Bombay, Karnataka. You come down, this one is Coastal Karnataka, the Uttar Kannada and Dakshin Kannada district. Then this is Southern Karnataka, you have Bangalore here, but Old Mysuru region is this part, and then you have Central Karnataka. And this map basically makes clear that BJP managed to held on to most of its, or basically won seats only in parts of what you'll call as Bombay Karnataka region. This is a Lingayat sort of dominated region. And then they did well in the Coastal Karnataka region of Dakshin Karnataka. Some seats in Dharwad and Shimoga where from B.S. Yadurappa comes from, and then Gulbarga and Bidar district here. Otherwise, Congress seems to have done across the region. JDS, which is in green in color, does well only in Old Mysuru region, and these are districts of Hassan and Mandya, and Neelan will explain the changes that has taken place in these regions in much more detail later. Okay, so what's the big picture message? Those who were following Karnataka elections would know that there was a palpable anti-incumbency sentiment during the campaign. The BJP government was accused of not having a good governance record. There were allegations of corruptions at the highest level. Congress ran a campaign on 40% Sarkara, meaning that the highest level of the government were taking, commissions of 40% in big building and road contracts. And at the leadership level, the incumbent Basavaraj Bommai doesn't seem to have a similar level of popularity in comparison to the Congress state level leadership, namely, former CM Siddaramaiah or Congress state president D.K. Shivkumar. On the other hand, it seems that Congress played most of its card right, kept the elections on local issues, even though there might be no love lost between D.K. Shivakumar and Siddaramaiah, and now we are witnessing some of it in the run-up to who becomes the CM. They at least kept the factional feud under wraps. They tried to appear on social media platforms, tried to have much more sort of jovial conversation to give a picture that everything is right in the camp, and they rallied the rank and file behind the Congress party candidates. There was visible or better on-ground mobilization of Congress party in comparison to what has happened in many other states. Congress in Karnataka was seen to be setting the agenda of elections, and perhaps Sandeep ji is going to touch upon this a little bit more. National level factors, it's a state election, but BJP tries to make most of these state elections also national elections. We saw Prime Minister Modi going to Bangalore many times, doing road shows. And then Congress has also been trying to highlight the effects of Bharat Jodo Yatra. In fact, Jairam Ramesh tweeted that there were 20 constituencies through which Bharat Jodo Yatra passed, and they won 15 of that this time. And in fact, my friend Fayad Ali, who's in the room, and he'll answer some questions on this, he did some analysis for Hindustan Times, basically. So if you look at the graph here, the red line is actually where the route of the Bharat Jodo Yatra, and what Fayad and his co-author Resuf did is actually look at vote share of assembly constituencies from which the Yatra passed, in comparison to assembly constituencies that were not touched by Yatra. And so there was a visible, Congress party managed to increase its vote share by 5 percentage points. Last time they were around 38.5, 38.6, and this time it was 42.9. So overall 5% increase. What we witness here is that in Yatra constituencies, Congress vote share actually increased by 10. And so if you do closer calculation, the increase in Yatra constituencies were much higher, and Fayad would be happy to answer questions later on this. What seems to have happened in Karnataka, and this is something I'll get Aditi ji to comment later, is that Congress has managed to revive its Hinda Coalition. So Hinda is a Kannada acronym, meaning a coalition of backward classes, minorities, and poor. This coalition was actually created by Devraj Urs in 1970s. And so if you look at the data from Access My India exit poll, what seems to be happening that Congress has got a larger percentage of votes from scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, from Kuruba community, which is of CM Siddaramaiah, comes from this community, Muslims, heavy consolidation of Muslims in favor of Congress. And BJP seems to be getting most of its votes from Lingayat, upper OBCs, Vokaliggas, and upper caste, right? And even if you divide this data by income categories, what we saw that Congress had a massive lead in the poorer segments of Kannada society in double digits. BJP only led Congress in the top segment, which is less than 10% of the electorate. So BJP had a small lead there, but poor segments, lower middle class, Congress has an edge. We also saw Congress had similar advantages among young and women voters. So a sort of a revival of a Hinda Coalition. The question which Neelan is going to answer is why did the economically marginalized and socially marginalized rallied behind the Congress this time in much larger numbers? You go ahead.
So just by way of sort of starting with something. Here are the promises the Congress Party made in its manifesto, and actually these promises, I know you have to look very closely, so let me just quickly tell you what is in the slide for those of you who cannot see it clearly. Money for diploma holders and graduates, 3,000 a month for graduates, 1,500 for diploma holders, 200 units free electricity, 2,000 rupees a month for women, 10 kg rice per person per month, and free bus service for women across Karnataka. That is actually what this sign says. Now, I want to sort of make a couple of points about what these promises look like. So when we were looking at a slide like the previous one, you might imagine that putting together something that looks like the Hinda Coalition means that you have to start making particularistic caste-specific promises to be able to put together a caste coalition. When you look at this, you don't see that at all, right? And one of the changes that we're starting to see in Indian politics is these kinds of very universalistic schemes, right? Promises to all women, promises to all diploma holders, right? And you see this is a strategy that has been used across many states. Mamta has used it in West Bengal, Patnaik has used it in Orissa, Kejriwal has used it in Delhi. Even Modi is using it quite significantly at the national level. Oh, it's not all. Let's switch mics. Sorry. Can you hear me now? Better? Everyone here can hear me. So, okay, sorry about that. So, so we do see that despite certain demographic trends looking like something that we know, we are seeing innovation in the space of the kinds of promises that are being made to voters and what kind of impacts they have. So one sort of small comment on this. Often the academic class, of which both Rahul and I are a part of, we are obsessed with a couple of things, right? We're obsessed with what lower levels of government, what intermediaries, how they help access to benefits. We are obsessed with benefits that are targeting a particular community and not other communities. What is interesting about where Indian politics is going, in many of these parties that have successfully put up a defense against the BJP, is that you're not seeing those kinds of promises, those kinds of mechanisms in play. So I want to talk a little bit about what some of the demographic implications of this were, right? So there are a number of ways to slice the data, all basically tell you the same story, but the top bars, which are saffronish in color, the lighter colors tell us the BJP's strike rate in 2018, and the darker, deeper color tells us the BJP's strike rate in 2023. Just as a reminder, the strike rate is the percentage of seats that you win as a function of the total that you contest in that category. So what you can see is the BJP's strike rate actually didn't drop much in urban constituencies, from 57% to 50%. If you can remember the graph that Rahul was showing you right in the beginning, And the fact that the BJP is winning in Mangalore and Bangalore to a great extent, that actually explains some of why we're seeing not much shifting in the urban strike rate, right? Whereas in the most rural constituencies, what we see is that the BJP had almost the same strike rate in 2018, 55%, and it has dropped by 30 percentage points to 25%. So one of the things that we see with the kinds of promises that were made was the emergence of a major rural-urban divide in terms of who voters supported. And that's not surprising when you look at the kinds of promises that were made. The bottom bars, light blue shows Congress's strike rate in 2018. Deeper blue shows Congress's strike rate in 2023. You can see almost a mirror image of what's happening. Congress does do a bit better in urban constituencies because the JDS is doing worse across the board. But broadly, we're seeing sort of mirror image kind of impacts where the Congress doesn't pick up as much in urban areas, it picks up much, much more in rural areas. Right? This graph on the right is actually a graph that comes from, well, it's actually two different papers use similar graphs. One is a paper that I have written in EPW, looking at how Modi's welfare policies impact national versus state politics, and a second paper with CPR's president Yamini Iyer, looking at why voters pick perhaps different parties at the state level versus the national level. Now, what this graph is showing is that in a large number of states, major states, we're looking at double-digit percentage point drops in support for the BJP from the national election to the state election, right? So in our most recent election in Karnataka, the BJP had 51, 52%, depending on which way you use the numbers, of the vote share in 2019. It has dropped to 36%. It was 36% in the last state election as well. So it's a 15 percentage point difference, right? And one of the points that I think we make in each of these pieces is that once we're starting to see the rise of a certain kind of welfare politics and the need for voters to attach or attribute that to a person who they believe can credibly commit to delivering those benefits, then in the national election, we have a natural candidate for the BJP, who is the Prime Minister, right? Prime Minister Modi. At the state level, it becomes much, much more complicated for the BJP. And part of the reason why the nationalization of politics is being used by the BJP across the board, even in state elections, is that at the end of the day, a lot of the political attribution is by construction having to go to the Prime Minister, when many voters at the state level want a strong state level government or a strong state level leader. Many times the party that is opposing the BJP at the state level, see the TMC in West Bengal, or in this case, the Congress Party Karnataka, actually do have a state level leader who can credibly commit to represent disadvantaged castes and deliver benefits, right? In this case, Siddaramaiah is known as somebody who has, and actually the president of the Congress Party as well, as somebody who is able to successfully represent the more disadvantaged populations of Karnataka, incredibly committed to delivering these benefits, right? So we are seeing these kinds of very, very strong demographic changes that are coming as a function of certain kinds of welfare promises that are being that are especially towards the more disadvantaged groups within the state. Okay, so this is way too much is going on this graph. The only point that I want to make here is that we tend to think of 6 major regions, 5 or 6, depending on who you ask: Bangalore, Bengaluru, Bombay, Mumbai, Karnataka, Central Karnataka, Coastal Karnataka, Hyderabad, Karnataka, Old Mysore region, or Southern Karnataka, right? The main thing I want you to take away from this graph is that in 5 out of the 6 regions, the Congress Party did much better, often significantly better than the BJP in vote share. The only exception is Bangalore. So what I've done here actually is I've looked at strike rates. And again, remember, strike rates are the percentage of seats a party wins, the function of those that they contest across regions. And I am going to mark in red here certain strike rates you should look at, because there are a lot of numbers here, right? So the Bangalore region, Bengaluru, the main thing to notice here is that the sort of most strong regional local party, JDS, falls apart in many regions in this election. And its strike rate dropped from 19% to 3% in Bangalore. And a lot of that is added to BJP's column, right? It goes to almost a 50% strike. In Mumbai, Karnataka, you see a massive shift towards the Congress, going away from the BJP. Same thing in central Karnataka. And coastal Karnataka, as Rahul pointed out, has consistently voted for the BJP. It is a place where we see lots of Hindu-Muslim polarization. And yes, the Congress party does a bit better, but it's still a place that's largely voting for the BJP. Hyderabad, Karnataka, yes, again, the Congress is a bit better than last time, but it is a place the Congress is already doing better. The other big change that you see is in southern Karnataka, the old Mysore region. There, the JDS's strike rate is dropping from right around 50% to right around 25%. And a lot of that is being added back to Congress. Now, interestingly, you are also going to see BJP's strike rate drop. And you might think, okay, well, that means that all of JDS's vote share shifted towards the BJP. But when we actually look at vote shares, and here's a graphic from India Today done by somebody who used to work here at CPR, Ashish Ranjan. What I like about this graph is that it's just very clearly showing you the vote share shifts from 2018 to 2023 for the Congress and the BJP. And I just want to focus on two things. In the old Mysore, southern Karnataka region, Bangalore region, we're actually seeing increases in vote share, average vote share for the BJP. So while it is true that the JDS fell apart in the old Mysore region, it's not true that all of the vote went to the Congress. It's just that the BJP was so far behind that even adding some vote share to the BJP and adding actually more vote share to the Congress meant that the BJP could not catch up. And so its relative strike rate went down. In the Bangalore region, you can actually see a lot of the voters seem to have moved towards the BJP. So the idea that if somebody didn't vote for JDS, they voted for Congress seems to be hard to argue given the data. It's a lot more complicated. It's based on local regional factors, but this is the kind of data that we're seeing. Okay. Couple of quick points here. So Rahul talked earlier about one of the natural vote banks, one of the core set of core support bases for the BJP had been the Lingayat community, which was largely in the northern part of the state. Now it's very hard. I mean, of course, we have people will tell you this is a Lingayat heavy constituency. This is not. That's not really a good data strategy. So one data point that we have is former Chief Minister Yediyurappa, who is of course very popular with the Lingayat community, had formed his own party in 2013 and contested by itself. Now, while the party only won 6 seats, it actually got more than 20% vote share in 48 of the constituencies. So what we've done here is that we've simply looked at the BJP's strike rates in places where KJP, where Yediyurappa's party, had gotten more than 20 percentage points in 2013 and compared them to places where Yediyurappa's party had gotten less than that. Okay. Now, what you can see is that in 2018, light saffron bar on the top, right? The BJP strike rate was 60%, where KJP's vote share was over 20%, suggesting that there were strong complementarities between where Yediyurappa was strong, where the Lingayat community was numerous, and where the BJP had a very high strike rate. Okay. In 2023, that number drops to 21%. Okay. In seats in which the Yediyurappa's party, KJP, had less than 20%, there the strike rate had been 40% in 2018, and it drops to 30%. Now, one of the things that's very interesting about this, and there were grumblings that the Lingayat community, Yediyurappa's camp, were unhappy with the BJP. There seems to be some evidence for this because the strike rate for the BJP is actually worse in places where KJP's vote share was high than it is in places where KJP's vote share was low, which is quite a peculiar finding. But it says something about the level of fractionalization among the Lingayat community leaders at a minimum, and voters who had at one point supported the KJP. Okay.
Okay, let me sort of.
Was also upstairs on. Sorry.
So this year we're going to have 4 assembly elections. In November, December, we'll see Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Telangana going for polls. And so, of course, some interest is in knowing what would be the impact of this election, A, on Karnataka politics itself, B, on some of these assembly elections, and 3, on national politics. And so something for us to understand in Karnataka, things are going to get interesting. And the reason they are going to get interesting because JDS is shrinking. And so if you look at these 2 graphs, the first one actually plots vote share of Congress, BJP, and JDS in assembly elections and in Lok Sabha election. And so while, and this is like, we don't have a good answer, and I'll try to get my panelists to, reflect on this, which is while Congress's vote share in assembly election increased this time by 5 percentage points, BJP, while losing 40 odd seats and losing badly, their vote share was not affected at all. It remained at 35.9, though, we can do arithmetic calculation that they gained in Bengaluru and old Mysuru region. But the vote, given the kind of anti-incumbency we were seeing during the campaign and leadership being so weak, how could BJP manage to retain its 36% vote share? And JDS is basically not only dropping in Lok Sabha assembly elections, but in 2 points. In Lok Sabha election, it always underperforms, and it's also shrinking. And so in 2024, if the trend line follows, JDS would be a much smaller entity. And so what we might be witnessing in Karnataka politics is emergence of bipolarization. And this emergence of bipolarization is not from just this data point, but over a period of time. So vote share of top 2 parties, of course, in 2013, I have added BJP plus KJP because Yediyurappa came back. But if you look at like vote share of top 2 parties, it's going from 60 to now 80 percentage points. So top 2 parties are basically getting almost 4/5 of the vote. And this is also reflected in, so political scientists like me and Neelan fancy this number, what is known as effective number of parties, right? And so over a period of time, median ENOP is also declining, meaning at the local level, at the constituency level, now the competition is getting restricted between just 2 players, right? And so this emerging bipolarity in the system is basically will kill JDS. And something I want people to reflect, political parties which have long sort of like patronage-based system and of caste loyalties, 18 and 19% vote share is actually a very dangerous threshold, because once your voters don't see you winning, they will start jumping the ship. And this is what seems to be happening now. JDS is around 9% in Lok Sabha and 13% in Vidhan Sabha. Many of those voters would shift. We don't know to whom. They could shift to Congress because Congress has strong Vocaliga leadership, but some of them can also shift towards BJP when Mr. Modi is going to be on the ticket, right? So Karnataka politics is undergoing a change. And so we should be cautious of over-interpreting what happened in 2023. That same kind of verdict would be seen in 2024. Of course, BJP is going to face challenges, may lose some seats in Karnataka, but to think that they will come down to, like they have 25 seats in Karnataka and they'll come down to say 14 or 15 is sort of a stretch. The second point on assembly elections, and again, see, Congress basically managed to put up a very powerful campaign on the ground, largely playing on economic anxieties fueled by unemployment, price rise. And so if you look at Lokniti CSDS survey data, they point unemployment, price rise, and poverty as the top 3 issues up on voters' mind voting, right? And now that Congress played this sort of like campaign as a challenger, BJP can very well play the same narrative when it comes to Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh, where Congress is incumbent party, right? And so it of course depends on many other things, but that card is now available to be played. And something I want Neelan and others to also reflect on later. BJP made similar kind of promises as Congress did, right? Like half a liter milk and some sort of unemployment scheme and some grains. And so why do, because it's not just merely promises, right? That we have these 3 or 4 promises. They have to tie it down to the campaign narrative. There should be a leadership that should be able to convince on-ground mobilization. So why do sometimes poll promises work and don't work, right? And so when you see these assembly elections in November, December, BJP as a challenger is going to make a issue out of them. Now, given Karnataka verdict, Congress won big, right? And of course, there is now going to be a conversation. Can Congress scale this up and put a decent challenge to BJP in 2024? And so there are 3 or 4 things, 4 lessons that come out from Karnataka. Despite factionalism, it managed to keep under wrap, and Congress will face same set of challenges in Chhattisgarh. You have Chief Minister Baghel and then T.S. Dev in Chhattisgarh. In Rajasthan, you have a warring faction between Sachin Pilot, he's on Yatra, and then Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot. So how to keep the factionalism under wrap? Showing some sort of organizational agility in setting the agenda, right? From day one in Karnataka, Congress seems to be basically setting the agenda. Only during the last leg of the campaign when Bajrang Bali and those kind of things became an issue. And now we know that it didn't matter at the end, right? Like elections seem to have been decided much earlier. I think Karnataka also teaches something, that if the opposition, and not just Karnataka, wherever BJP has been losing in last 4 or 5 elections, largely it has been happening because the opposition parties there managed to make this election a state election on local issue and local leadership. And so the key to 2024 opposition challenge lies in basically not making the election national, but all keeping it state by state. And there they need to have a very smart campaign strategy, because you can't just make the national election state by state, because BJP will try to make it in national character. And finally, the Hinda Coalition, able to manage able to stitch a coalition of bottom half of the society, it seems to be the key for the opposition. Can a similar coalition be resurrected in other parts of the country, and especially in North? Right, maybe if you get sort of like JDU, RJD in Bihar and SP in UP, you may have some sort of leverage, but these parties also come with some baggages, right? And so it would not be easy to resurrect this coalition at the national level very, very easily. So I'll stop here, and now I'll request everyone who's on Zoom to keep putting your questions on Q&A or chat box, and I'll try to bring them up. But let me start with Sandeep ji first. And my question, Sandeep ji, is largely going to be on, like, you've been following Karnataka elections. Why was Congress party able to set agenda in Karnataka from day one? And 2, what kind of, like, of course, the survey data which Access My India as well as Lokaliti CSDS findings in the Hindu today showed that Hinda Coalition has been resurrected. Why did we not see any sort of like big movement of any community away from BJP? Why was BJP able to retain the aggregate 36% vote?
Thank you, Rahul. It was fascinating to listen to both Nilanjan ji and Rahul and their explanation of the Karnataka verdict. I would largely go with all the points they made, and would of course respond to the queries that Rahul has raised. I would also be using the post-poll data which Lokniti undertook and which has been today reported quite widely in the Hindu. I'll be using that data for my analysis. To start off with, one small point of correction. The Congress seats have actually gone down by 1, and the BJP seats have gone up by 1, because the Jayanagar seat switched sides late at night on the day of counting. So that one correction we would need to do, that there is a 1 seat reduction for the Congress. I think they come down to 135 and the BJP goes up by 1 seat. That's a minor point. On the question of the Congress, its strategy and what it did, I have consistently been maintaining that if the Congress is ahead in Karnataka, they would secure a majority. Because remember, all the 4 times that Karnataka had an assembly without anybody having a clear majority, 3 times it was the BJP, which was the single largest party. That is 2004, 2008, and 2018. And once it was the Janata Party way back in 1983. So whenever the Congress has been ahead in the race, they have always crossed the halfway mark. And that's because their political canvas is spread across the state. Whereas when the BJP did not cross the halfway mark in 2004, 8 and 18, it was simply because of a poor performance in the old Mysore region. And when Ramakrishna Hegde's Janata Party in 1983, that time Janata, he was not, of course, the main figure, he came in later. When they emerged as the single largest party, that was, they did not cross the majority mark simply because of a not so good performance in the 2 regions of northern Karnataka. So the point I'd like to start off with is, when the exit polls clearly said the Congress is ahead, either single largest party or majority, my stand, which I stated in writing also, was that if the Congress is ahead, given the nature of Congress reach in the state and its spread in the state, it would be a party with a majority. Now, there is also I would fully concede the point which Rahul made, that the secret of the Congress success was very clearly its strong local focus. And please remember, while Rahul Gandhi in his first speech in Karnataka did refer to Adani, he was advised to stop doing that subsequently. And if you look at his remaining speeches, and if you look at Priyanka's speeches in Karnataka, it was exclusively reference to the BJP government at the state. So that was a very, very clear policy that the party adopted, and I think it has paid them dividends. Now, the other point which I'd like to mention, which is there in our study today, if the BJP did reasonably well in Bangalore city, I think the reason for that is the weekend show that the party put up, which the Prime Minister led. I think the fact that those rallies passed through several constituencies in Bangalore city, I think was a factor. And if you look at our post-poll data, that data also clearly indicates that those who voted for the BJP very clearly say that we were influenced by Prime Minister Modi's rallies. On the other hand, we had asked the same question with regard to Rahul Gandhi's rallies, and the response that we were influenced to vote for the Congress on the basis of Rahul Gandhi's rallies is actually significantly lower, which again goes to buttress the argument that the victory of the Congress in Karnataka was largely a victory led and driven by the state level local leaders, who now, of course, may be having a big fight in Delhi, but till the election result, till the voting happened, they were all together, because both Siddaramaiah and I think Shivkumar realized that unless they put that impression of being united, neither of them would ever be able to become chief minister after this election. So I think that's an important, another factor that I would like to highlight. I must also make reference to the point that a lot of arguments are being heard that BJP's vote share did not go down. It was just the Janata Party which collapsed and the Congress took that vote, and therefore it's not a anti-incumbency vote. Now, I think why would I call it an anti-incumbency vote? Nilanjan did refer to it when he was speaking. While the BJP vote share has remained more or less where it was, I think it's important to underscore the fact that in central Karnataka, and I'll be politically correct, in Karnataka now we don't use the term Hyderabad Karnataka and Mumbai Karnataka. In Kittur Karnataka and Kalyan Karnataka, Kittur Karnataka is what was earlier Mumbai Karnataka, and Kalyan Karnataka is what was earlier Hyderabad Karnataka. So if you look at central Karnataka, Kittur Karnataka and Kalyan Karnataka, the BJP's vote share has actually declined, varying from 3% to 7% in all these three regions. The BJP vote share has also declined marginally in coastal Karnataka. And I know that Jim is there he's there listening. And Jim has raised the question that we seem to put coastal Karnataka, Uttar Kannada, Dakshin Kannada, and Udupi in a single basket, which we should not. And I'm going to make reference to that in a moment. Where do you see the BJP's vote share going up marginally? It is only in Bengaluru city, where of course they did a little better, and it went up in Old Mysore region. However, the rise in vote share in the Old Mysore region saw a much higher vote share rise for the Congress because of the Janata Dal's decline. And in the contest, the BJP actually has got less seats in the Old Mysore region than it got last time, in spite of its vote share going up, because that vote share going up did not go up to that threshold which required it to go up to in order to defeat the Congress candidate. So I think this particular point needs to be strongly emphasized. I also would make the point that it's very wrong to put the entire coastal Karnataka in one basket. The BJP continued to do very well in the Udupi region and continued to do very well in Dakshin Kannada region. They lost one seat in Dakshin Kannada, not because of the Congress, but because of infighting within the BJP. The real loss that the BJP suffered is in Uttar Karnataka region, where several seats, including the seat occupied by the Speaker of the Assembly, the party lost. So in Dakshin Kannada district and Udupi, they have actually retained their position, and they have done, the BJP has done worse than what it did last time in the Uttara Kannada region. I'd make two more points and then maybe come back later if there are any questions.
Great.
On the question of the Dalit vote, now this is something which Jim has also been talking about. Now the left and the right among the Dalit vote. The right has traditionally been with the Congress. The left has traditionally, if not traditionally, at least in recent elections, gone with the BJP. And a lot would have hoped that with the BJP making the reservation matrix that it did, the left vote may have increased for the BJP. What the Lokniti post-poll survey shows is that this did not happen. A bulk of the Dalit vote, 63% of the Dalit vote went towards the Congress. And yes, of course, there is a larger percentage of the right vote which went and a slightly lesser percentage of the left vote which went. Another point, and here I'm going to make a distinction between what has been said by some other surveys, including Access My India and Lokniti. There is this huge discussion about the Kittur Karnataka region that even though the BJP retained the Vokkaliga vote, the Lingayat vote, their seat share went down dramatically in the Kittur Karnataka region. The Lokniti post-poll data provides a very different picture. The Lokniti post-poll data clearly shows that the Lingayat vote for the BJP has dipped to 56%. And as much as 30% of the Lingayat vote has actually gone to the BJP and gone to the Congress. And this is a significant rise in the Lingayat vote which the Congress has got. And this to a certain extent explains the nature of the verdict in the Kittur Karnataka and Kalyan Karnataka region, and combined with the rainbow social coalition that the Congress was able to build, which the BJP was not. So it was not just the Lingayat vote in northern Karnataka and the Vokkaliga vote in the southern part of the state. It was additionally with these two dominant caste vote, the vote of the non-dominant OBCs, the vote of the Dalits, the vote of the tribals, and of course the vote of the Muslims. Okay. Now this is something that would need to be taken into account. A last point, which again does not come up as strongly in the Access My India, but comes up in the Lokniti post-poll data. The Congress did well across social classes. It's interesting that the Lokniti data shows that the Congress actually did well among the upper class also, the middle class also. But when you come to the poor, the vote difference between the Congress and the BJP goes to beyond 9%. The difference between the poor vote for the Congress and the BJP goes to 9% plus. And that, I think, made an important difference. Nilanjan referred to the promises that the BJP made, that the Congress made in this election. That, I think, was an important factor which also went in their favor. I would stop here, and I'll be happy to respond to any questions or queries that may come up.
Thank you, Sandeep ji. Now, let me get Aditi ji in this conversation. So two questions. One, basically, after the verdict, there has been a lot of conversation on how, BJP's effort to polarize the election on religious ground. Like in last 2 years, we have seen issues from hijab, and then whether Muslim sellers can sell meats in those sort of like local fairs, and then at the last was the Bajrang Bali issue, and of course, like people like Ram Guha tweeted that the scientific temperament of South has spoken. So the North Indian in me felt bad, as if we don't have the scientific temperament. But but the question is largely like, do you see like there are sort of like, did it backfire, it didn't work, or like can this sort of like model of Hindutva not working in South can be expected that there was no Hindutva factor, and then what will happen in North is not only the fertile ground for Hindutva? That's sort of like one question. And second is, see, BJP's rise from 2014 is not just happening because of consolidation of upper segments of the society, right? It managed to breach the lower segments of the society. The SC vote for BJP nationally increased from 12 to 24 to 33. Same with the STs and same with lower sort of OBCs. Now that in Karnataka, we see a consolidation of these communities behind the Congress, do you see in the run-up to 2024, this would be a new pattern, whether some of these communities which had come to BJP will now return either to Congress or state level political players?
Okay, so I should answer by saying, first of all, a disclaimer: I am not a scholar, I'm a reporter. And my frame of reference, for me, the long term is 48 hours. So please forgive me for being extremely short term in my analysis of things. right now we are convulsed with what is going to happen, who's going to become the chief minister, which community is going to be backed, etc., etc. And I'm sure that will, play out in the next 24 hours or so. But as far as bigger issues of what contributed to the Congress victory and the BJP defeat, and whether Hindutva played a factor or not, uh, I felt that it was completely inappropriate Hindutva.
Okay.
I mean, who in Karnataka knows Bajrang Bali? Where there is zero resonance for Bajrang, let alone Bajrang Bali. If they had used Anjaneya, if they had used a the local version of Hanuman, it may have changed something. But there was nothing. I mean, there was no response to Bajrang Bali and certainly no response to Hanuman Chalisa either. So I don't know. I felt that that was a big tactical mistake. It was a waste of effort. It was a waste of resources, and it was all, really like stretched. But overall, I do remember that in 24, when the car sevaks were out and marching through India, the biggest compliment of those that went to Ayodhya came from Karnataka, particularly from Coastal Karnataka.
Yes.
When I went to Coastal Karnataka, I found people really obsessed with issues of not only fashioning Hindutva in an appropriate fashion, appropriate to their community and to their reality, but also the democratization of those agencies which carry Hindutva into ordinary people, which is democratization of the mutts, of the religious places, because these are very, very important, just like Tirupati and other centers, they are very important purveyors of patronage, of land, and so I found that completely fascinating, both in 2018 and now. I mean, this has not been studied enough, but I feel that it should be. After all, when we study the systems that deliver education to the minorities, why should we not study the systems that deliver religious education to the Hindu communities? And people have not followed this, but there is a very big Mathadish in Mangaluru who has gone to court saying that mutt properties have been colonized, they have been sold to real estate developers, and so on and so forth. So in other words, these issues of management of Hindutva and how it is delivered will be the next area of reform. That's one. And the second is, I think there is latent Hindutva, and frankly, even among the Congress. So let us never forget that when we analyze something. Your other your other question was about the communities, the smaller communities.
Yeah.
I think smaller communities are still in the process of making up their mind.
Okay.
I would not say that the Karnataka result says that there's a wholesale migration of communities away from BJP to Congress. I think that would be
okay. So let me ask you two more questions since you took very sharp answers. One is, and this is someone who doesn't know Karnataka, so pardon my question that well.
Well, this is someone who doesn't know Karnataka.
But you've traveled and spoken to people. What is it about coastal Karnataka that there is a sort of this kind of affinity towards Hindutva politics? Because someone who looks this from far away, I would expect more resonance in southern Karnataka or Mysuru region, you were Tipu Sultan, and those kind of things. What is it about coastal Karnataka? My expectation would be that coastal cities, because they see lots of in and out migration, it would be more cosmopolitan ports and those kind of things. So what is it about coastal Karnataka that you have BJP Hindutva resonance, whereas in southern Karnataka, old Mysuru region, BJP is finding hard to even move in? And the second question is actually on the SC/ST issue. why did we, like, of course, they might be making up their mind, but what is actually driving them first towards the BJP, even if it's happening at the national level? And then, if they move away, then that's another thing, but what is bringing them here?
So first, Coastal Karnataka. In the same way that you saw the rise of the Muslim minority gang leader in Bihar and in UP, because frankly, there was no area for growth or development, economic development, and these people basically got contracts, and on the back of that became big sort of
Mafia.
local mafias. In the same way, in coastal Karnataka, because of the proximity of Bhatkal, and I don't know if you've ever been to Bhatkal, but it's most instructive to go there. In areas like Bhatkal, where there's a big Muslim majority population, there is a sense that the Hindu is becoming throttled. And the biggest subterranean crime gangs are Muslim gangs.
Okay.
When the whole movement for Ram Roti and Ram Shilas began, then I think the socialist-minded locals, this is what they told me when I went there, felt that they had had enough, and they just needed to stop cowering, and that led to a big resurgence or a big assertion of Hindu identity. So, I mean, I know there is a theory that where there is more commerce, the two communities tend to live together.
That's where I was.
But there are enough, if you go on the ground, there is enough evidence to suggest the opposite also.
That evidence is when you look at.
It's basically based on the newspaper reports of people like me. So that is not, I would not say that is very trustworthy.
And what would be your answer on?
And on scheduled castes, I haven't thought about it enough, and I must be honest. In UP and other places, I don't know what is happening to Chandrasekhar Azad. I don't know what is happening to the BSP legacy. I don't know enough about it.
Okay.
So I would prefer to not say anything.
Neelam, quickly to bring you in here, of course, you can answer any of the questions which you like from this sort of like Q&A box. But something I also saw some questions related to freebies and freebie economics, welfare policies. And since you talked about the Congress bold promises, and at that time I had hinted, BJP also made similar promises. And so now in the run-up to 2024, and even in state assembly elections, we are going to see political parties of all hue and kind would make some of these promises, right? Free this, free that. How much does it affect voters, and when does it do? So for example, if we are making this argument that poll promises of Congress help them to mobilize the marginalized, why didn't the poll promises of BJP do the same thing?
So I think that there are two parts, right? I mean, there is, of course, simply making a promise, but there's also being able to attribute it to somebody who voters believe can credibly commit to delivering those benefits, right? So much of the work, I think, of the papers I've talked about, that you've also written, many of us have written, right, is the Modi effect on welfare benefits isn't simply about making a welfare promise. It's my belief that somebody like Modi can deliver those benefits, right? And similarly, insofar as local leaders who are competing against the Congress are able to credibly commit to representing that kind of delivery, it can be very, very effective precisely because the person who delivers for the BJP is Modi and not a state level leader today, right? So in that sense, insofar as welfare delivery becomes a question, often the BJP is playing on the back foot in state elections. in many ways, it's a very weird shift for those of us who've been following, party politics, electoral politics for a while, because we used to think of many of the BJP chief ministers, right, like Shivraj Singh Chauhan, Raman Singh, as welfareist fundamentally, right? And yet, because Modi has come on the scene, they've either lost or had to shift their tactics, right? So, Shivraj Singh Chauhan basically rechristened himself as Bulldozer Obama, right? Right in the middle of all of it. He used to be the person that we associated with delivery, and now he's the person we associate with bulldozers, right? I mean, that's the kind of repackaging that is happening once the prime minister is able to take the political benefits of attribution to him for welfare. One other sort of small thing that I'd say that, is a change in the technology of delivery. So one is, of course, actual technology, right? Which is that direct benefit transfer means that somebody at the top is pushing a button and it's showing up in people's bank accounts. So when I say that this question of what are intermediaries doing, what are local leaders doing, I mean, there's a real sense in which today when you talk to a voter, they're like, who cares, right? That's not actually how I think about where benefits are coming from. But there's a second, more interesting shift that is happening, right? And I sort of referred to it, and I said, look, the Congress didn't make any specific promises to particular communities, right? And yet they're creating coalitions of particular communities. I think that sometimes when you read this discourse, it sounds like, no, you should be targeting class and not caste. The idea that there are complementarities between caste, class, identity it's not thought through very well in our sort of intellectual discourse. And I think we have a lot of examples where particularistic delivery, especially in UP, is a class example, a state that you know very well. So much of it has been turned on its head against the BJP, against either the BSP or some of you were targeting only this community. And therefore, all of these other disadvantaged communities were losing out. But today, when you're able to plausibly argue that our distribution is universalistic in nature, you actually take that card away from anybody who wants to counter mobilize among disadvantaged communities. Sandeep ji sort of very briefly mentioned, I mean, there's one thing that we haven't talked enough about. I mean, this fundamental division among Dalits in Karnataka between left and right. And the idea that somehow it seems that we are not talking about that as much this time, right? And is it because simply the parameters that we're using for economic delivery no longer mention somebody's identities very specifically? Even if that is the set of political leaders and representative leaders that are important for mobilizing certain communities to build caste and caste coalition.
Okay. Thank you, Leland. Let me get Sandeep ji, and so we'll do this round quickly, and after this, I'll get friends here in the room as well as on Zoom. Sandeep ji, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm not able to switch on my video because I've been disabled.
No, that's okay, sir. Disabled. Okay.
The
We'll
host
try
is-
to get
the
you on
host
video,
is-
but let me ask you my question. Something
Right.
that I presented at the end of the thing about Janata Dal secular and its declining vote share. The question that I'm going to ask you is, what led to this decline in Janata Dal's vote share? Is it because the feud within the family where the brother doesn't like the sister-in-law and those kind of things which people were talking about, or something else? Because, like in last 10 to 15 years, Devegowda's clout has declined considerably. And if this, the party declines, then it will change the nature of Karnataka politics. So what is at the core of JDS decline?
Rahul, multiple factors which have caused the decline of the JDS, and some of those are what you mentioned. I think the fighting within the family between the brothers, where the father had to finally intervene, and the reduced. I mean, the father's campaign has this time been very limited because at 91, it's difficult to expect him to campaign as vigorously as he did in previous elections. But that beside, I think I'd go back a bit and say that when in 2019, the Congress and JDS had a coalition and fought the Lok Sabha election together, that election was an important starting point of the decline that you see of the JDS in the old Mysore region. If the BJP made inroads into old Mysore region at that point of time, it was largely at the cost of the JDS. That's an important point to stress. And while the Congress has been able to recover from the challenges it faced in the Lok Sabha election, the Janata Dal has not been able to do that. So I think the inroads that the BJP made in the old Mysore region in the Lok Sabha election is something that has cost the JDS its base. Remember again in 2018 Lok Sabha elections, in the old Mysore region, the Janata Dal got more seats than the Congress. But this time around, the Congress has come up with a spectacular performance in the old Mysore region. And that is what I was trying to mention earlier. Even though BJP vote share has gone up in that region, it has not crossed that threshold which required it to beat the Congress. In a sense, in many seats, it was reduced to a bi-party competition, a competition between the Congress and the BJP. So even though the BJP's vote share went up, it was not enough for it to challenge the Congress in those seats.
Thank you, Sandeep ji. Aditi ji, let me ask you something which Sandeep ji mentioned in last sort of intervention, and also pick it from there. And since you said that you think in 48-hour framework, after the results came, Naveen Patnaik said he's not interested in any opposition unity. He's going to go alone. Whereas there is also a conversation taking place that perhaps on 18th or at a later date in Patna, there is going to be a meeting of opposition party leaders. Like, how do you see sort of like opposition unity, or which parties are going to come together after this Karnataka verdict? And my second question is, is it possible, given the nature of party competition at the moment, is it possible to actually make the 2024 election state by state? You know, Sandeep said, you like Rahul Gandhi in his first speech mentioned Adani, and then he was asked not to do that. Can you actually do that during national election, right? When Congress and Rahul Gandhi would like to play on some of the sort of like national issues, both on the question of sort of crony capitalism, economic anxieties, on social justice, on secularism. And so what would happen if the election acquires that national character, and can it be sort of like, you know?
So on opposition unity, well, we are keeping our eyes open and ears open for what will happen in Patna. That is just a episodic kind of an event that will take place. No doubt, Nitish Kumar will try and milk it for the maximum that he can. But I am not expecting anything spectacular to come out of Patna meeting.
Okay.
What would spectacular be? Spectacular would be committing yourself to a common slate, committing yourself to, I mean, not merely talk about talks. So it will be a meeting that will be taking place against the overhang of the Karnataka victory of the Congress. Other parties will become slightly wary because they will again fear that the Congress will try and assert itself over much elsewhere. We do have Telangana, where the Congress is frankly decimated. It's got nothing at all left, very little left. Will the Congress be humble enough to accept that and say that it's okay, let's move on? I'm not very sure at all. Your second question is about 2024 strategy. Will it be national versus local? Will a disaggregation of issues take place in a way that the opposition feels, we've seen past examples of Telugu Desam and Telugu Talli and pride and assertion of local identity and so on. We are seeing it now in the case of Bengal and the way Amartya Sen is being treated and so on. So maybe that will be a part of the campaign. I'm sure it will be. It's bound to be. But whether that will be the main campaign, I'm not sure. I would put much more emphasis and stock. I mean, the story that we need to watch is the conversation around social justice initiated by Stalin. But whether that gets traction, both in Patna and Delhi, because that will kind of bridge the caste versus class versus entitlement kind of debate that is going on. In terms of the very short term, I believe that we are going to see a massive Vokalika backlash if Shiv Kumar does not get the chief ministership of Karnataka.
Okay.
Partly, not just because Vokalikas feel that they've given their all to this election, which is clear from the way the Janata Dal Index has been celebrated and so on, but also because of the very sharp edge to the rhetoric by Sidramaiah. Sidramaiah is very sharp guy, and he is very blunt in his attack on upper caste.
Yes.
I mean, strictly speaking, Vokalikas are not an upper caste. But nevertheless, no Vokalika, and they are not client or they're not, well, for the lack of better words, submissive guys. They are tough guys. They're the founders of Kannada. So they will not stand by and watch BKS being humiliated, particularly by Sidram, the man who has divided them. So we are looking at that action.
But what if like there is just a 2.25 sharing kind of arrangement? That is what is being talked, or basically,
I think this election was not about compromise.
Okay.
So I don't know if it will work.
Let me get some questions from the room, and then also from Leland has been looking at some of these questions, and then you can answer. So let's get 2-3 from the room, and then
Perfect. We'll just answer them.
questions. Anyone here? Yami, you wanted to ask something? Okay, that's not worry.
So I,
Shamik, can you help with this?
one question, like the point you raised, the Hinda Coalition. So post UP, there was a buzzword in Indian politics, which was subaltern Hindutva. And that lower caste subaltern groups are voting for BJP. So what Karnataka shows, and of course to some and also Bengal elections showed in 2021, is it a very weak conceptual framework to explain voting behavior of the subaltern? So that's broad. Yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah. Yes, sir. And if you want to say something about your interesting map, it's back of
I'll see if folks have questions. I just wanted to double click a bit on the urban rural divide. It seems suggested that the freebies was correlated with like urban or rural doing better for the Congress. And I just want to know if there's like a little bit more to think about there beyond just the development angle. If there are certain issues in the urban area that BJP tends to perform better on.
Okay. So keep your question.
Yeah, very short.
Yes.
Thank you. Sir, I would like to only make contribution, my view on that. Very short, very short. Last time I said about these elections all over India, that what matters is the leadership and strategy, cadre, cash, freebies, media, and majoritarian politics. That was the 6 points. But in this election, 2 things have emerged, especially for the Congress. If you see the Congress history, the debaters in the last elections and all. Now these 2 things have emerged in this one, and because we say I'll be short, so I will only mention those 2 things. And that is one is victory. People have said that this is because of this, because of that, because of this factor. But there are two main factors, and that should be repeated if they want to achieve anything. And that is victory. This is the victory of collective local seasoned leadership strategy. Local seasoned leadership strategy. That should mark that point. Local seasoned leadership. They should be seasoned. They have been bringing youngsters since the Rajiv Gandhi time. Punjab में सारे youngsters लाके बेड़ा गर्क कर दिया इन्होंने. उसको सरदार को खत्म करके. Right? Now the second one is the cadre. Leader can't do anything without cadre. Other things have gone down, but they will emerge again. On this election, only two things have worked.
Leadership plus
local seasoned leadership. Season.
Season.
Local season leadership. There should be season. If they're not season, you are not going to. Thank you.
You want to answer any of the questions here or any of being asked?
Yeah, let me take a sort of looking at the set of questions and trying to put a few of them together, right? So there's a question from Louis Stillen about thinking about why is it? So this is a case in which the incumbent government is BJP. Why is it that if an incumbent BJP government is losing, all of the flack is always going to the local government and none of it seems to reflect on Modi? Or is that actually a fair characterization of what's going on? There are a number of other questions about, do we believe that a national election can be local versus national? What is an optimal strategy against local strategy? What is an optimal strategy against national strategy? These are kinds of questions that we have. So I want to say, there's something we've all been using this, and it's been a buzzword in the media too. That the Congress went local against the BJP's national. So part of what is strange here is it can't be that every time the BJP loses, it's local, and every time the BJP wins, it's national, right? I mean, then that sort of defeats the concept. The other issue that we face, I think, when we think about this, is that until the most recent period, the period just before this, we were undoubtedly in a period where, according to these definitions, everything was local. Sort of also strange, right? That there, of course, were national issues. It was still a national election, but regional parties often held the floor, and they do actually still in many places, right? So I do think that part of what is strange is that we need to flip the question on its head and say, how long will politics continue in this vein when we're talking about national elections in a context that is so diverse linguistically, caste-wise, identity-wise? Why is it that this can sort of continue the way that it does, given that there are social forces and parties that represent some of this other diversity, right? I think we've been trying to give some kind of an answer with welfare delivery and so on, but it's definitely an open question. Now, there's a question about what does this say about subaltern Hindutva and so on. So like, look, I mean, subaltern Hindutva is obviously very poorly theorized, right? I mean, I think it's not clear what it means. It's not clear which subaltern they're talking about. It's an understanding that Hindutva is being used perhaps to reach out to certain lower castes, but not to other certain lower castes, right? So certainly there has been a strategy for Hindu nationalists to broaden the caste base. But the question is, does this intellectual concept give us anything more than that? And can it be understood as any deep, sort of theoretical insight into how BJP wins or doesn't win elections? Maybe, but it certainly hasn't been developed to that point. You want to answer the last question? Yeah. So one sort of So this question about urban and rural distinction. Now, I don't have great answers on why we're seeing it. We have now sort of started observing a fair amount of differentiation in many contexts between urban and rural sort of elections, right? So we used to think of the BJP as only a urban party that has now spread rural and so on and so forth. I think where welfare delivery has seemed to change the game is that either many of the schemes are very heavily tilted rural, PM Kisan or something that is to the farmer, or even a lot of the questions that are using some, even if it's a light economic criterion, are going to be more heavily tilted towards rural areas than urban areas. But it does seem that it's become easier to associate the household in these rural areas with the sort of direct benefit transfers than many urban areas, and that we've seen this in many of the contexts in which we've worked. So that's what I would say, that there seems to be a welfare angle and a differentiation between urban and rural. It's not clear, given the universalistic nature of why that's happening. Other than the fact that on the ground, it just seems like the scale of transfers are much greater.
Okay. Aditi, let me get you on one question which we have not discussed. The Congress campaign had this element of 40% Sarkara, right? Corruption was a major issue, or at least that's what the campaign suggested. And since you have been, covering elections for many decades, my limited understanding when I go during elections, there are a couple of things which people everywhere will say, right? That vikas or development is a bada issue. Unemployment बहुत बढ़ गया है, बहुत भ्रष्टाचार है, corruption, and so same issues come up in every election, right? Do they actually play a role or a decisive role, or they play marginally? Like, did corruption actually matter in Karnataka? Or okay,
I think it did. Because the evidence of corruption was there in the traffic jams, in the way the people found it hard to move from one place to another, in that terrible tragic accident which took place because of the girder falling on a moving motorbike, in which two twin children were killed along with their mother, and so on and so forth. So when you have incidents like that happening, people tend to correlate the money that they have to shell out for mutation, etc., with their basic miseries in life. And when you correlate that, then corruption becomes a very big issue. If your overall quality of life is not so bad, if things are smooth, the lights don't go off, you get water all the time, you get if the state is there for you, then corruption, I think, does not make that much of a difference. So I don't know.
Rahul, can I make a point if possible?
Yes, I'm coming to you, sir. Aditi ji wanted to.
So I mean, that's my limited point, that you would see evidence of corruption affecting people directly every day.
Okay. Sandeep ji, please feel free to make your point on this corruption issue, but let me also ask you the last question, and we'll end it with that, which is, we have talked about the lessons for Congress and what it is going to do, and opposition unity. What are the lessons for the BJP from this election? Given that, because someone actually asked an interesting question and I don't have it. Is Karnataka basically like Rajasthan or Himachal, where every 5th year the party changes? And so what happened in Karnataka was just expected. And so should BJP draw any lesson, or is what it was basically natural? So, let it go.
Rahul, before addressing the specific question you have raised, let me just dip into this debate which has gone on about corruption. I think it's not so much the charge about corruption, but it is the response to the charge about corruption. When the Congress and others made the allegation of 40% Sarkara and all that, I think what the state government and the state BJP did is they came up with a very, very feeble response to that, which led to that development of that perception across the state that The government is not responding vigorously to this issue. The leaders, save the chief minister, no other minister in the government was willing to talk on the issue. So that I think was an important factor, the type of optics it created, that here you have a government which is certain charges are being leveled against it, and save the chief minister, nobody else seems to be taking on the allegation and responding to it and answering it. One more small point, while conceding that D.K. Shivkumar is an important Vocaliga leader, and he's taking his claim on that issue in Delhi today. Let's also remember that DK is a Vocaliga leader from rural Bangalore. And that's a huge difference from being a Vocaliga leader in Bangalore and Mandya and Tumkur. The Vocaliga heartland, the leadership of the Vocaliga community is very different in the heartland. And I think for purposes of identity, definitely the claims will be made that it is a endorsement of the support that the Vocaliga community gave. But within the Vocaliga community, it's important to note that Mr. Shivkumar is largely seen as a Vocaliga leader from Bangalore rural area. On the larger question you raise, I think much has not been spoken of the fact that south of the Vindhyas, where Hindi is not a major language of communication in the rural parts of the state, the speeches that BJP leaders made in Hindi, while in the Hindi language they were very effective, the question was, did it actually reach the people? On the other hand, you had the Congress president being able to incidentally speak in Kannada, the language of the state, which is also his language. I think enough has not been said about the impact of the language of dialogue in the campaign, especially when you're talking of states in the south, and I think Karnataka comes into play for that reason. What would the BJP's strategy be? I think if Karnataka has pointed to any direction, it's basically this, that when the BJP is defending its government at the state level, and the opposition has very credible mass-based leaders, it requires the BJP also to have a mass-based leader to be able to challenge the opponent, and simply the central leadership will not be able to bail out the BJP. BJP leaders in Karnataka were consistently saying, let the campaign go on. Once the prime minister comes, everything will change. And that is exactly what did not happen. So I think there is an important lesson that when the BJP is the ruling party and in the opposition, there is a strong visible candidate or set of candidates. If the BJP's own state level leadership is not strong enough to be able to compete with the opponent, the central leadership will not be able to bail them out. And this will be an interesting factor, especially I think in Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh, may not be in Rajasthan, where a totally different debate is now going on.
Okay. Thank you, Sandeep ji. On that note, we conclude today's session. Thank you, Sandeep ji, Aditi ji, Neelanjan, and everyone who joined us here at this at our conference hall and also on Zoom. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and hopefully we'll have some more conversation, not just during election season, that's November, December, but between this time also, since this is our 50th year, we'll keep bringing you such conversations. Please join us whenever you can. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.